In a village in India, locals are observing their rice festival. They gather at the temple, each person bringing in their harvested rice and pouring it into a big jar. Somewhere in America, a scientist named Linda Watt is testing some basmati rice grains in her mini lab when she gets a call from her father, Eric. He also works at Mogul with his daughter. He informs his daughter that Mogul is doubling their staff and research budget. Quite exciting news for Linda, as she believes her mom will be proud of her with the rate at which she's going. She and her father work together to successfully perfect a genetically modified form of basmati rice, which is called Rice 9. At the headquarters, some reporters come to get information on this modified rice grain and its components. Linda invites them to come to check it out on the microscope. Later that night, the board members at Mogul meet in the conference room to discuss who will be the face of Mogul in India. They need someone who people can believe in and who has the power to melt hardened hearts. Mr. Gurgan, the head of Mogul, leads the meeting, and he goes over each staff one after the other until he finally finds the perfect person who has so much faith in her work. Who else can be better than the creators of the rice? He smiles to himself and soon gets on his feet to meet the father and daughter who are going over some tests in the lab. He informs Linda that she'll be traveling to India on a PR mission the next day, and she will represent their company over there for 3 weeks and sell the product to the locals. The whole thing doesn't sit well with Linda, because she's supposed to be working in the lab, plus she's not a PR person. Her father agrees with her, but Mr. Gurgan tries to convince them about how important India is because without it, there will be no lab. It sounds more like a threat than convincing though. The next day, Linda arrives in the capital of India. The city is quite different from the serene environment she's used to. The noise, crowd, and traffic. India is quite a busy place with lots of people. She gets a cab to take her to the train station. She gets on a train to Bellary, which Gurgan calls the hallowed cradle of basmati rice. In the course of her journey, she sees a local selling tea. Just when she reaches out for the last cup, a stranger by the name of Rajit also reaches for it. However, he lets her have it. A perfect gentleman. She takes a sip, and it's truly as good as Rajit claims the tea is. She soon arrives in the town, and a native by the name of William, accompanied by his mother, comes to pick her up from the terminal. William is expecting to pick up her father, but he still welcomes her, saying he's willing to be her government rep. Meanwhile, Rajit comes out of the train hoping to meet the pretty lady, but he gets disappointed seeing her getting into a car already. They arrive at the house and Linda is welcomed in the traditional Indian style. When it's time for dinner, she experiences a cultural shock. Who knows how many she will still experience? She is served dinner without cutlery, and what's more stunning is that the other people on the table are eating with their hands. William smiles to himself as he tells her that he'll be showing her one of the wonders of the town the next day. Linda declines because she has a lot of slides to prepare. Her statement leaves him in shock. He wonders why she'll be needing slides to convince a bunch of local farmers. It soon results in an argument between his aunt, who is a farmer, and his sister, who's against the motion. Convincing local farmers with slides sounds very hilarious to them. A new day breaks, and along with it, the activities of the town resume. Rajit, an agricultural science student, returns home to continue rice farming with his family because he's unable to pay his tuition fee, despite how brilliant he is. His father comes to wake him up with a bowl of water as they need to leave early for the farm. Meanwhile, Linda wakes up to the sound of the rooster. In no time, she's on her way to the lab in Bellary. She arrives at the lab and drops some test specimens on the table when she gets a call from her father. 2 assistants in the lab accidentally open the box and her specimens shatter on the floor. Rajit is at the farm, and he's so sad that he's back to farming just because he can't pay for his tuition. He laments bitterly until he suddenly gets an idea that might just be his ticket back to college. He tells his dad that he can sell stinkweeds. He believes everyone will line up to buy it because it'll save them the cost of using expensive pesticides on their crops. He soon runs off without completing his statement. William stops by the director's office and he's tasked with the responsibility of taking Linda around for her lectures in various cities. He thanks the director, who believes Linda's coming to India is going to favor all the farmers. At the lab, Linda complains about her device, which is low on battery. She tells the driver to take her home so she can make some calls for some slides to be delivered. Unfortunately, the car breaks down and the driver has to go get some parts before they can go home. He leaves her in the vehicle parked by the roadside and walks down to where he can find the item. Linda takes out an umbrella and decides to walk down the path instead of sitting in the car until he returns. She soon runs into Rajit, who leads her into the village, claiming he's going to hunt for monkeys. Then, they come across his friend Buddy. Rajit winks at his friend to play along, and they both teach her a very weird traditional greeting that involves gently slapping the head with both palms. It's quite hilarious that Linda believes the two of them. They continue walking until Linda sees William talking to a local close by. She walks up to him and he introduces her to Sri Barslam, the village elder from the shrine. Buddy whispers to her to greet, and immediately Linda greets the man in the way they taught her. Everyone is stunned. Buddy chuckles and casually explains to all that it's a traditional greeting they had taught her. William covers up for her and explains that it's the highest form of greeting where she comes from, even though it's not. They all laugh about it, and William informs her of some activities she will need to participate in. He leads Linda away after the conversation and comes back to warn Buddy and Rajit briefly before joining her. They walk to a dance class where some children are learning the traditional Indian dance. Rajit's sister, Sita, is in charge of the dance class. She welcomes Linda in, and William excuses himself to go attend something at the ministry. Sita invites her to dinner with her family. Hearing the family talk about their son, who is studying agricultural science, makes her eager to meet this young man. She is surprised to see Rajit again. He reminds her that they had met on the train before now. After dinner, they spend the evening with Linda, who plays them a few songs with the guitar. Rajit's father asks her to keep it since someone had left the guitar in their house years back. Later, Linda goes on a stroll with Rajit. They discover that they have a common likeness for weeds. The atmosphere between them gets tense as they come face to face and stare deeply into each other's eyes. They are about to kiss if not for the timely intervention of Aman, the driver. What an unexpected night indeed, a budding romance story. Let's see where it leads. Linda chuckles and bids him good night, but not before she invites him to come check out some rice in her lab. The rest of the family comes to bid her good night as she takes her leave. The next day, William brings some flowers for Linda. The moment she sees him, she quickly throws the flowers out and covers his hair and body with a lab gown to prevent any contamination in her sterile lab. He tries to start a conversation with her, but she seems too busy preparing for her meeting with the farmers in an hour. William decides to take his leave since she's not even listening to him. On his way out, he stumbles upon Rajit, who is carrying a bunch of bananas with him. Rajit enters the lab and Linda instructs him to take the bananas out and cover himself up, but he won't listen. He tries to prove a point that the rice will end up outside in the care of Mother Nature, and Linda is getting exasperated with him. His father soon calls out to him so he can get back to work. Linda asks him to leave his apology bananas on his way outside. She sighs in relief that he won't be contaminating her plants. The farmers soon gather at the lab, and Linda ensures they are well covered from head to toe. The presentation starts, but her slides are not even available, so there's little she can do. She gets on a rough start as the farmer starts complaining and reciting all they've heard about the rice 9. She feels frustrated and sits down, wondering what she's even doing here in the first place. Seeing how she looks, the farmers start talking among themselves. They think she's nice and cool. She even ate at a farmer's house and played with a goat, unlike Jeffrey, the previous sales rep, who visited them and ended up sleeping with someone's wife. They give her a chance and warm up to her. They thanked her for the cool hats and slippers she had given them. Linda feels encouraged and decides to continue. She succeeds in convincing the farmers and getting them to like rice 9. She even shares some t-shirts with every one of them who attends the meeting. After her class, Rajit comes to meet the farmers in a bid to sell his stinkweed to them. Unfortunately, they refuse to pay him any attention and give him a record of the Rice 9 anthem so he'll listen to it. He feels frustrated and angry at the same time. He wonders why they'll believe a stranger's promise over his, their fellow farmer, and an educated one for that matter. The farmers are quite excited that they will be getting modified rice in exchange for their local basmati rice. They tell Rajit that the Mughal Corporation has given them a date to exchange their rice for the improved Rice 9. To further infuriate Rajit, they make jest of him until he angrily leaves with his board. Before leaving, he warns them that Mughal does not have their best interest at heart, but they all laugh and mock him. Rajit goes back to continue work at the farm, and Linda comes excited to share the news about her present. Rajit is already pissed, so he takes it out on her and they get into a little argument. Rajit walks out angrily. Linda is equally unhappy with his reaction. She doesn't seem to understand why he's reacting that way. She gets back to the lab and angrily throws away the bunch of bananas he gave her as an apology gift. The next day, Rajit and Buddy try their best to convince the farmers not to sign the contract with Mughal until they've given his stinkweed a trial. The farmers mock him at first, but then, they think there's no rush, as Rajit might just be making some sense. They agreed to have a rice contest after Diwali. The farmers agree among themselves to spread the word among other farmers, so they don't sign the contract until the harvest, when Rajit will have to prove himself. Meanwhile, Linda is still working on her demo crops. Every day, she goes to monitor the growth of rice 9, which was planted on a piece of land. She and Rajit are still not on talking terms, and whenever they run into each other, they go the opposite way. Linda counts down to the day of the exchange, while Rajit counts down to the day after Diwali. A fierce competition, I must say. Let's see who wins. Gurgan gets word that throughout the 12 cities, not a single contract is signed yet, and the exchange day is fast approaching. He doesn't look pleased, but he's got his fingers crossed. William, on the other hand, decides to go over the contract and agreements so he can understand everything in the fine print. He makes a discovery and decides to give a call to Gurgan's office. Evelyn, Gurgan's assistant, tells Gurgan about the call coming from Linda's office. It turns out that it's William on the line, and Gurgan is quite amused with the young man. He listens to the implications William discovered. From what he understands, he asks if Linda is aware that after the exchange, the farmers will be trapped by rice 9. Firstly, they will not be able to pay for the seed year after year, and then they will be forced to pay in other ways if they don't have cash. Secondly, their lands might end up being taken away. Gurgan puts his other partners on the line from all across the world. He convinces William and makes a deal with him not to tell the implications to the people. He promises the young man a place for him in New York City. This is the point where greed steps in, and jumping to the opportunity, Williams takes the offer believing it's for their greater good. Gurgan smiles wickedly as he brings the call to an end. With a few days left until Diwali, William is worried that the farmers are not signing. He meets with them to find out what the problem might be, but after seeing Rajit and hearing a few things, he understands what's going on. He goes to the lab to check up on Linda, who is worried sick that only 2 farmers have signed the contract. He calms her down and assures her that the farmers will sign after Diwali because they believe everything is in the stars, so they can only sign after and not before the festive day. He invites her to a dance later in the evening. Unfortunately, she doesn't have any dress that will suit the occasion. She goes to Sita for help and thankfully, she lends her one. She also promises to have Rajit drive her to the venue where everyone is in the spirit of Diwali. Later that night, Sita and Rajit, as well as William and Linda, arrive at the club. Linda sees Rajit getting flustered, unable to dance like the rest of the people. She walks over to where he is sitting by the bar, and not before long, it seems like they finally resolve their issues and they start relating well with each other. Linda confesses her worries about the contract as the farmers are not signing, and she doesn't even know why. Well, Rajit feels a little bit of guilt as he ought to tell her the reason why, but he keeps quiet about it. He asks her for a dance, and after the dance, he decides to spill the truth. Just when he's about to confess to her, a bouncer comes and throws him out for not having a hand stamp. William comes to meet Linda, who is wondering what Rajit might have to say. On their way out, William secretly gives the bouncer a tip for taking care of Rajit right on time. William is not going to watch anyone stand in the way of achieving his goal. The next day turns out to be the day for the contest. Rajit intends to tell Linda the truth and sing her a song his father wrote for his mother, with the hopes that he'll be forgiven. He gets up in search of the paper where his dad had written the song. Thankfully, Sita shows him where to find it. She advises him to skip begging her and just sing the song. She smiles as she can see that her brother is in love. Very early that morning, the farmers harvest Linda's and Rajit's rice and stash them in bags as it's the contest day already. And of course, they have to do the needful. Rajit is busy making preparations on how to seek forgiveness. Meanwhile, Linda walks upon the farmers. She sees the stinkweed, and instantly, she knows what's going on, especially with the bags carrying Rajit's and her name on it. She walks out of them in rage, hoping to find Rajit to confront him. Her father's call stops her midway, and Eric informs her that he's on his way to come cheer her for her big day tomorrow. After the call, she continues on her way with the stinkweed in one hand. The moment she spots Rajit from afar, she picks up a hoe from the farm she's walking through and races towards him with so much anger rushing through her veins. Rajit sees her furiously approaching and runs. She ends up chasing him until they get to her office. They both stop running, seeing the amount of farmers who are queuing to sign the contract. William calls her to congratulate her for succeeding in earning the farmers' trust. One of the farmers apologizes to Rajit. He wishes he could find another way to get back to college. Rajit looks lost and confused, while Linda wonders why his mood suddenly changed, and he's walking away. She goes over to meet him, and they soon settle their fight. They spend the day sightseeing and talking about the beautiful traditional practices of the community. Linda even gives him a free packet of rice 9 specially for him, and once more, they get into another session of argument over different views on certain things. He takes her to the temple and sings his father's song for her. They get up close in each other's arms. Rajit suddenly stops and asks what she means when she had earlier said it would be a shame for the villagers to stop the tradition where they drop portions of their rice seeds as offerings in the temple. Linda explains that rice 9 is sterile, and the people don't get to plant the rice seeds they harvest. It means they will have to keep buying rice seeds from Mughal every time they plant. It doesn't make sense to Rajit, and he reacts in a way Linda doesn't like, as expected. They get into another fight once more with Linda walking out of him angrily. In situations like this, of course, you should know that William is somewhere hiding and listening to their argument. Rajit finds a way into William's office so he can do some research about this rice 9. He finds out about Mughal's agenda to steal the farmers' lands, and when he innocently brings it to William's attention, William puts him behind bars. He's working hand in hand with the police chief. They frame Rajit and make Linda believe that he's the one who destroyed her greenhouse. Linda believes that the packet of rice 9 seeds she gifted him was removed from the scene as evidence. Well, several days pass and farmers from far and near come to Bellary to exchange their bags of rice for rice 9. Gurgan and his team, including Eric, arrive in the town, and they are all walking around the village when Linda gets an idea. She excuses herself and heads for the station. She makes the officer believe that William is aware of her visit, so he lets her in. She intends to speak with Rajit and find out why he hates her so much. Rajit tries to explain, but she won't let him because she believes he's lying to her. Seeing there's nothing he can do, he calls her back from leaving and tells her to ask the farmers if they know that they will have to buy seeds every year. Linda is hurt by his actions, however. She gives his word a thought. When she gets to where the event is being held, she takes her seat beside Gurgan and asks if the farmers know that they will be buying seeds every year. Do you expect him to tell her the truth? Linda believes him and shrugs it off, as it will be disastrous if the farmers don't. Anyway, it's time for Linda to address the farmers, and as she speaks to them, she recounts her first few days in the town. She thinks Rajit is a crazy guy, and asks if they know that they will be purchasing the rice 9 seeds, so she can further believe that Rajit is crazy. From their reaction, she can tell that they are unaware of it, and they think she's joking or something. Gurgan takes over the mic and tries to shut her off. A few smart farmers instantly know that something is not right. They follow her lead, and the small train of people following her soon increases as they head for the train where their rice is stashed. Unfortunately, Gurgan came fully prepared with a special unit just in case they needed it. One of the officers comes to free Rajit and quickly runs away after declaring that he has no hand in the plot. Meanwhile, Eric cuts the microphone wire. A man needs to stand up for his daughter who might just be in danger. Gurgan takes care of him and puts a call through to William to know if he can depart with the farmers' bags of local rice. Looks like it's time for William to choose between his greed and his loyalty to his country. He looks at the pendant bearing the picture of his parents and tells Gurgan to come. It seems we'll never know what William has up his sleeves because he tells the guys in charge of the train to shut the engines. Linda sees that they cannot go over the armed military men, so she heads back to get the horse that the priest brought to celebrate her success. She gets on the horse and soon catches up with Gurgan, who gets the train rolling, with only Evelyn by his side cheering him on. She gets on the train and unhinges the rice cars. Then, she advises Gurgan to call William and confirm the contracts. Meanwhile, Rajit drives over to the railway train and waits for it. Gurgan calls William to ensure that the contracts are intact, but he hears Eric's voice laughing with William over the phone. Guess what? William chooses to be a patriot. He sets the contracts ablaze with Eric assisting him. Linda rushes over to convince Rajit to get off the track as the train is coming in full speed, but he wouldn't listen. She sees the train approaching, and she knows there's only one way to get Rajit to do as she wants without arguing. She kisses his lips, and the young man loosens up a little. She takes prompt action and pushes both of them off the track, right before the train crushes the vehicle on which they are standing. After the situation is fully under control and the farmers have their basmati rice back, Linda and Rajit get married in the traditional style, and they are joined by the whole village to celebrate, making the occasion very memorable.